Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey guys, before we kick off on the episode, I want to introduce you to a new phase of the Home Building Hub. We have decided to go back to school, that is SKOOL. We've created a community based on the back of a podcast we've been running for so long now. We've created a community for you, for all home buyers to jump in and get access to a whole range of tools, checklists, information, and most importantly, find other home buyers in there so you can follow people's journeys, you can share your own journey, and we're excited to build the most trusted community that is independent and objective in the whole country. So get in there, it's SKOOLschool.com. Look up Home Building Hub, download the app, come and say hi, and we will see you in there. Hey there, folks. Welcome to the Home Building Hub. You are with Colin and co-host Darren as always. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that I don't know we've covered before, Darren, after about 3 years of doing this. A little bit of an insight into, what was that?
It's an amazing we haven't covered this. So
yeah,
it's good.
Touched on it a little bit, but we're going to sort of take you through practical completion time frame and I guess practical completion inspection, which is PCI. What it is, I suppose we'll cover a little bit more of an introduction and the money component, what to pay or when to pay, defects versus within tolerance. Independent inspectors, we'll touch on that. If you're not having an independent inspector, we'll talk a little bit of what some DIY walkthrough tips are. And then I suppose after the PCI, Daz, as we get closer to that handover, that there's a little bit more in your journey still to go. So this episode's probably right for you if you're, 4, 6, maybe 8 weeks out from handover. Just maybe save it for listening for later on, getting closer to that point. But if it's earlier, then yeah, also save it as well. Just really could be helpful, useful as you hit that sort of stage of your build. So Daz, how you going today, buddy?
Going real well, mate. Yeah, really well. It's certainly winter's set in, Cole. It's been a wet old week here in Ballarat. So yeah, it's there's plenty of water out the front. I'm not sure how the mower's going to go chomping through the grass, all that sort of stuff. But winter's here and it's looking all right. Look, I don't know why they're saying the reservoirs are low and all this, mate. It doesn't stop raining all week. I can't imagine how they're low. So hopefully a bit of runoff, bit going on, and but no, mate, going really well, thank you.
It has arrived. Yep,
Certainly
fresh.
arrived, and she's fresh outside. So yeah, anyway, it's all good. But I think this is going to be a great episode, Cole. It's again, we haven't touched on this one before, so it'd be really good to rip into this one. So I might kick it off, mate, by setting a bit of a scene, I guess, and that scene would be that the keys are in sight. The supervisor's walking around the house with you, and you know what he's saying to you? Just sign here. Just sign here. Right? The emotion's high. And this is why people miss things at PCI, right? And then they become a bit disappointed because, and PCI is not the only point to capture items, but it certainly is the main point to capture items that need to be rectified and fixed throughout. So, I guess the big mistakes that people make is that they rush through it, right? So they really feel rushed through it. They're not really knowing what's a defect and what's not. So what is there to be fixed. And they're paying before they're in the position to understand what actually needs to be fixed. They just pay the money and then all of a sudden they've lost their leverage, I guess, is that point. So, it's probably one of the most important steps along the way. And so it's really important to be really well prepared. So, if you go into that well prepared, knowing what you're looking for, knowing what you're doing, then you're going to be in much better position to have a great PCI, get your house handed over in a really quick time frame with all those little bits and pieces sorted and fixed and moving in and being really, really happy with where things are. So, I think it's a great episode to roll on through. So I guess what is PCI and practical completion? It's a contract stage, so it's a part of your contract. The home is complete except for minor defects or emissions that don't stop you from living in it, I guess is probably the key. So these are the little bits and pieces that, the house is ready, you can move in, etc., etc. But we just want to get those things sorted. So the builder issues a notice of practical completion. The practical in completion inspection is a walkthrough for you. So you get to walk around the house with the site supervisor where you write down any defects or any incomplete items on a PCI or defects list. So you'll run around the house. You might put some tape on the walls where there's some painting required. You might note that, it said there was going to be a toilet roll holder in here and it's missing, or something like that. Fly strings haven't been installed yet, or there's something else that's not been done, and it's touching on all those sort of things. Generally, occupancy permit which is issued by the building surveyor, not the builder. Um, that may or may not have been issued, but generally it's very close, if not been issued. Um, it's a legal document that says that the home can be lived in. Different from the PCI, you can't move in without an occupancy permit issued, right? So be really clear on that. Um, the handover bit is the change of keys. So after the final payment clears, it's you getting the brand new keys to your home and putting them in for the first time, and those keys now, I guess, amending the lock so that it only fits on your keys, not on the builder's key, and you're away. Um, the final claim is the last progress payment, commonly known as the completion stage. Um, it falls due at practical completion before you get the keys. So you can't get the keys if you haven't paid the money. So you're going to have to pay the money. But somewhere between practical completion, you getting your defects list written up, etc., getting all those things done before you get the keys, you'll get the final invoice. Some builders split this into a quality inspection. So they might have their own internal QA process and then a PCI. So I guess have a chat to your builder about what that process looks like. The terminology and timing can differ from state to state. So we know we're Victorian centric. So this is a more Victorian centric, but it's certainly worth checking out what your contract says if you're interstate, but it's a similar process. So yeah, it's running through that process of that final inspection, getting that defects list together, and then getting those items fixed before you hand over the home. Probably sums it up pretty well, Kyle.
Yeah, super important part. I like to refer to it to clients and tell them it's what I call the blue tape session, and that's all it
Yeah.
is. You run around the blue tape and you want to put it. The supervisor will generally be totally fine with you putting blue tape on things. Like that's the whole point. So you want to be checking all those things, taking your plans and your contract, or at least your quote that's in the contract, and you just want to make sure it's all sort of ticked off. And for the things that are not, which is every house ever, I don't think there would exist a house at PCI that's absolutely 100% perfect. There's
Yeah.
always going to be bits and pieces. That's the whole point. Don't be alarmed by it. Don't be concerned by it. This is the opportunity to go, right, we're sort of 97% there. Let's touch on these things and get those sorted between PCI and your ultimate handover when you get the keys. So I guess to lead into the next topic there, Darren, we talk about the money and the leverage, I guess, reality in that part. This can confuse people. And I know that you said that some builders have like a QA appointment and then a PCI. And
Yeah.
in that case, I assume that builder would be blue taping in their QA and then
Correct.
taking someone through the PCI to basically that's their handover appointment, really, to say it's all been done. Well, let's
Yeah,
move
yeah.
to let's get the bill paid and move to keys. Some builders don't do that though; they just have a PCI. And in that case, like if the OP's been issued occupancy permit, in the eyes of the surveyor, the house is livable, and then you got your PCI where there are bits and pieces. And a lot of clients are like, well, I want those bits and pieces completed before I make the payment. And that happens all the time. Reality is it's not how it works. The builder will still expect you to make payment, but the builder must make good on those items prior to and in time for your handover. And if they don't, then you just don't accept the handover. You need to, I guess, understand that once you do take possession and sign that off and take the keys, and then you're accepting the house as it is, unless you can actually say there's a few things still to be done after that. Wouldn't say it's necessarily recommended, but it does happen, particularly like if it's a landscaping item that they're going to put the turf in tomorrow because they didn't want to put it in 2 weeks ago because by the time, you turn up for your handover, it's dead. So there are some logical reasons for having a list of items. But most importantly, the lesson here is um, if the builder needs you to pay, but you've got a list of these what we call minor defects, and they are minor defects, which is really in line with what practical completion means. It doesn't say perfect and ready to live in and ready to hand over. It says practical completion in line with all those sort of regulations. There will be some of those items, so please understand that it does vary with the builder, but it's not the end of the world if you've got a list of blue tape items but you're still going to pay the bill. It just means that in between that bill being paid and the handover, the final one, you want to make sure the builder does those things. That's all. Don't accept the house without it, I suppose. It's quite a grey area. It can be, Darren, like we've seen a little bit of
Yeah.
that, people's understanding of that process. But my advice to people is don't necessarily book removalists on the day of your handover. You want to get there and make sure that all those PCI items, the blue tape items, have been rectified and addressed and whatever. Reality is, at both PCI and handover, you want to have a list. And not just you on your notes on your phone, you want the supervisor to have the list. And you sign that off. And the list just needs to
100%.
be 5 things or 15 things. It doesn't matter. As long as it's listed, then it needs to be addressed. Okay? So that's probably the most important thing. Above all, if it's listed, it will be addressed. Because if it's not listed, then you get to hand over and they're like, no, I don't remember talking about that. It's not on the list, so
Yeah.
make sure it's on the list, most
Yeah,
certainly.
document it
And
really
yeah,
clearly, don't you? That's the key. Like, so not
you
only
have to.
document it, don't write it down. Just don't put paint touch-ups. Be more specific to where they are, what they are, right? So that,
Yeah.
because we've seen it, like both ends of that, where, the customer hasn't picked up on something and they're expecting it to be fixed. Or the reverse of that is the builder just takes, you put the blue tape on the wall and they just pull the blue tape off the wall and it never got painted and therefore it wasn't
Mm.
fixed. So there's both ends of that. And we hope that there's a happy ground in the middle. But I think if you've agreed, it's really well documented, then it's unlikely it's going to be missed. And then that's a
It's
win for both.
it's of benefit to a supervisor to have that really well documented because the supervisor's not the guy or the girl going to finish up the paint touch-ups. They're not the ones completing those final items unless they're like more maintenance-y type things that they can do themselves. But they will then pass the feedback on to the painter and say, right, mate, the hallway's got 6 bits. It needs addressing here, here, and here. And then the living this, and then there's a list. So it
Yeah.
helps them. And then when the painter says, I've finished it again, it's all good, the supervisor can go through the list and make sure it's done, no different to you, the client, doing the same thing. So it's really important. And then, yeah, were we going to cover, later on, we're going to cover the inspection reports, aren't we, Daz? Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I think that it's really important that furniture bit too. Don't book your furniture removals because things go wrong, right? Like, so the bank might put the payment through, but it hasn't hit the builder's account yet. So the builder's waiting on that money. They're not
Mm.
going to give you the keys until I've got the money. Bank says I've sent it. They're saying we haven't got it because they're with a different bank and, the bank's holding it up or whatever. These things happen and settlement doesn't take place on the day expected. And you're sitting there going, well, I've got my furniture guys out the front ready to move
Mm.
in.
Yeah.
It's just really ugly. So I would say give yourself a few days buffer. If you settle on a Tuesday, get your furniture guys to come on the Friday and do
Yeah.
it that way. Those few days really make a big difference because if something goes wrong, it's normally rectified pretty quick within a day. But to tell you, the furniture removalists aren't thrilled when they're sitting there and they can't unload the truck. So, yeah, be
Well, I mean,
mindful of what that looks like.
the clock is ticking, isn't it? So they can sit there and
Absolutely.
yeah. So it's good point. It happens probably more than it should.
Yeah, yeah,
So
indeed. And it's
yeah,
because people jump the gun a bit, I think,
they're
and
excited.
they
Yeah,
take it as gospel that we're going to settle on that day. There's things that are beyond people's control
yeah.
in that. So I guess the next one, Cole, is defects versus within tolerance. And it's always a fine line for people. So there is a guide to the standards and tolerances. that references, uh, the reference that decides what an actual defect and an acceptable finish is. So there's always going to be this fine line between uh, what you think's a defect and what is, termed by the tolerances or the guide, the standards to what actually is a defect. So, understand that they might not always align. And if you're a stickler for absolutely every detail, sometimes you're going to be disappointed in that, So everyone's slightly different. I must say I'm probably a bit more forgiving on some of that stuff. So I'd probably be the guy that lets some stuff go that others wouldn't.
Mm.
And then you've got others that are like, no, every little dot you could possibly imagine there's a speck of dust there. That can't be right. So you get those type of people as well. Just be, if you're that type of person, understand the guide to standards and tolerances is there for a reason to say that that's the line in the sand, I guess. So, um, some real examples of those grey zones would be paint, finish, and touch ups, cracks in plaster, nail pops, tile lippage where they're sitting up a little bit, um, grout and silicon lines, what they're meant to look like, cabinetry alignment, minor scratches, finishes on render, has it got an extra swirl on the front? Is that tolerable or not tolerable? Glass and benchtop marks, what are they meant to look like? It's got a blemish in the stone. Is that a blemish or a fault, right? Is that natural or not? Particularly when you're using natural surfaces. The other bit with all of those is you've got to understand these homes are being built by humans. So if it's not machine built, it's not perfect to that level. So just understand that there can be some, differences in that. When it comes to looking at things like your paintwork, it's considered you should view it from a normal distance in normal light, not with your nose against the plasterboard and a light running down it, trying to pick out every possible fault. That's not what that the standards and tolerances allows for. So you'll see a builder push back on that, and you might get a bit annoyed by that, but that's what is is allowed for because you're going to get some of those differences. And generally builders are smart about the way in which they present the home, things like the way in which doors open on houses to help. They put bulkheads in place to try and break up some of those lines. Things like that are really clever things to do to try and make sure that you don't see some of that stuff. Because if you look down a long passageway and the light's coming from the other direction, you get a reflection of light, you might be like, hold on, there's a defect, but if you stand in front of it, you can't see it. And that's the
Mm.
point, right? So you got to be looking at what that actually looks like. So, you know, um, I guess don't also reverse that. Don't let the supervisor walk all over you and say that something is, or that's just, that's tolerances. Well, hold on. Let's look at what the actual tolerances are, and then we'll
Mm.
decide what's right and what's wrong. So, certainly, some discussions will happen in that space. I guess four things to talk about would be what's a defect versus what's incomplete work versus what's damage versus what's in within tolerances. So if you couple those four together, there's certainly some discussions need to be had along the way potentially. If, for example, the work's not been finished, right? So if it's incomplete work, it's incomplete work. It needs to be done. But if it's a defect, it needs to be fixed. But if it's within tolerance, well, your hands are tied. So, just understand what those things look like, right? And you want to make sure that all that stuff's addressed at the PCI appointment.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting it is. That is I understand both sides of the story, Daz, there, and I can empathise or sympathise with both sides, being the client and then being the builder. So dealing with the paint on the hallway upon the entrance to the house is it's the most common thing. They got the door open, the sun's blaring through, and you're like, oh, that looks crap. That's not good enough. Um, but again, like it's hard for a client to understand and read and understand all the tolerances because that's
Yeah.
just not what a client should be to that level. You know what I mean? So there's got to be a little bit of give and take and building up a bit of trust and relationship with your supervisor over that journey is one really good way to just sort of level with them. And, I think you said some of those really detailed clients, and no offense to these people, but I refer to those clients as engineering clients because they are just
They
naturally
usually are.
wired that way, and and they're actually some of my favorite clients because I'm detail oriented too. So I don't mean in a bad way, but there's a different level of detail to a client who has an engineering type mind or brain as opposed to someone who's the opposite of that.
Yeah.
So you can be more. There's more tolerance within the human being as well. So one of the things that I think is really important is the give and take a little bit,
Yeah.
understanding because if you put your builder or your supervisor under so much stress, then you're less likely to get them to, you know, I guess, do some things in your favor. They will keep
Yeah.
you down to the absolute. So when you're within tolerance, and because you've been granular on everything to date, they'll say, well, that's intolerant, within tolerance, full
Yeah.
stop, finished. Don't talk to me about it again. Whereas if you've got a good relationship, they'll be like, yeah, all right, I'll fix that up for you, mate. No
Yeah. I
worries.
reckon I can
Like
get that done.
there's a little bit of that you got to be careful of. And I think clients do forget another thing is that they're paying a volume builder in a lot of cases, a volume rate, but expecting a Taj Mahal product. And I
Yeah.
think there is a little bit of that. And don't get me wrong, before we get 1,000 messages, there's also the other way where you are paying a volume builder for a good value product, but you're not getting it. Right. So
Yeah.
you should be fighting for that. But it goes both ways. And some of the things we see in Facebook groups posted about, oh, this is not good enough. And it's like, wow, like it
Yeah.
is totally good enough. Just what expectations you have up to you. And I think that's where the grey is, Darren, is you've got all this is subject to interpretation. And sometimes clients don't agree with the interpretation of a builder. And a lot of the time, the builder doesn't agree with the interpretation of the client and vice versa with building inspectors and all that sort of jazz. So
The other one I
it's
would
an
say too,
interesting part.
Colin, is to our builder friends out there, be empathetic to the customer too. I know I was one of the most disappointing times in my time in this industry was at a PCI appointment, and they'd missed fixing a paint touch up,
Right.
and the builder walked up with his hammer and he put the hammer through the wall, and he said they won't miss it this time.
Oh,
And that's somebody's house, and I
wow.
nearly died. I was mortified that this could possibly happen, that he thought that that was an appropriate action was to put his hammer through the wall to say, "Well, they won't miss the paint touch up this time." Like,
Mm,
now they've gotta patch the plaster, fix that, hope that the patch looks good, and then paint over the top of it, and I did not know what to say to this poor fella. I
wow.
just shook my head and went, I couldn't believe what I just witnessed. So don't be that guy as a supervisor either that thinks, well, I'll just make a point of it, because he's raised it and the job wasn't done because it wasn't done.
Yeah.
And, that was unacceptable behavior. So just, to our builder friends also to show some empathy to the customer that all they're asking is that the right thing be done. And it was. It
Yeah.
was a paint touch up that needed to be fixed. Wasn't done. Said, I'll fix this. I'll show you his boss.
Wow.
But, mate, you look like a goose. So,
That's
yeah, we
that's
don't like that
interesting.
stuff either. So there is 2 sides of it, and builders can sometimes be heavy-handed too, and
Mm.
we're pro builder, but also we're pro customer when that happens. Let me tell you, that's
Yeah.
you know, I
That's
actually
why
ask that guy shouldn't be working in our industry anymore. I
That's
think
why
he's
we're spending so much time on this particular thing because it is such a grey area subject to the opinion and interpretation of each individual
correct.
supervisor, builder, like the person in the office, like your inspector, which we'll talk about next, and you, the client, right? Just as well as we do that, if you've got an opinion that you go for a certain football team and someone goes for a different team, you're not going to agree on it, which one's the best team. Like it's just, it doesn't make one of them right or wrong. It's just what you believe for that particular situation. So if you don't understand any of this and you're just don't want to deal with it, go and get yourself a private inspector. And that's pretty common. Now, sometimes people get them for every stage. Some people just get them for a PCI. The very least, if you're going to get one, get it for the PCI, because that's really
Yeah.
the one that, the most important one. So I would certainly recommend it. It's a good builder won't be scared of you hiring a private inspector. If anything, to be perfectly honest with you, they would prefer it, because then they can talk to someone who understands their world rather than a client who's not quite sure about what the defects and tolerances are and what the regulations are and things like that. It's actually a better discussion. So inspector will understand the standards and all that sort of stuff. Of course, they'll catch things that you won't yourself, because they'll be crawling in the roof space and checking the floor, waterproofing, all those things that you and I, as a normal client, just would not do. We'd be looking at the cosmetics of it more than anything, Daz, I think,
Absolutely.
as a client. So that's really important. They put it in writing. They take photographs and they outline what's maybe if there's a defective item, or I really say, I suppose, compliance versus cosmetics. And to the inspection reports are interesting, because the reality is that a builder doesn't need to address every single item on the inspection report. A client thinks initially that they do, but that's not the case. They have to address the things that are not compliant, of course. And then there's a whole list of grey area, which is what they think should be done to make that more presentable, or there is always that level of grey area in those reports. And obviously you're paying the inspector, so they're there to represent you, make sure that you get the best outcome for your home. But the builder will challenge a lot of those items. So what happens, and you have to be prepared for, is that a building inspection report, let's say for even numbers, has 30 items on it. Out of the 30 items, the builder may agree to do 10 of them. Those other 20, within tolerance or whatever, they'll be written. Each one will be addressed. That's within tolerance, not touching it. Yes, we agree. We will address that, blah, 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 all the way through. That's the reality. You just won't get 100% of your report addressed by a builder, because it is, like the previous discussion we were just talking about, a lot of that cosmetic element is up to interpretation. And some things the builder, if you had a nice relationship with your supervisor, he or she may just go, yeah, no, I'll add those 3 to the list. I'll just get those done for you. We'll clean that up a little bit for you, even though technically it's already within tolerance. And that's why I was saying, like, please be smart with how you deal with your builder. And in fairness, sometimes builders aren't dealing with clients the right way either. So you have no choice but to get, shitty and upset with them. Totally understand that and respect that. But give it your best shot, because it'll give you actually a better chance at getting the right result at the end of the day. So definitely worth the money, but just understand the process a little bit with those inspectors. Yeah.
They're the reasons for using an inspector. I guess for some of the reasons against using an inspector would be the cost. It can be quite expensive, from a few $100 to well over, $1,000 for that one inspection. And if you're getting them to do 4 or 5 inspections throughout, it could be, $3,000 to $5,000 you might be paying your inspector. I've heard that sort of numbers. So it can be quite costly. Um, some builders resist the third parties on site and limit their time and access. Um, some will. I know of some builders who actually won't even allow some inspectors. Like, they've had such run-ins with some of these inspectors, and that's probably a reflection a bit on both. If you get to a point that the builder won't let that inspector on your site, probably says the inspectors, you want to look at why. Like, is that a good or a bad thing? Like, maybe the inspector's going too far too, and just, got a bug to bear with that particular builder. Um, a report is only as good as the inspector themselves as well. So, how do you choose one? Are they registered? Are they insured? Are they experienced with volume builds? Can you get a sample report off them? All those things will help you choose a inspector. And what you don't want also is one that's going to be picking up on stuff that's not necessarily going to be fixed either, that they don't understand the tolerances as well, right? Because I've certainly seen that over the years as well. And the other bit is getting your timing right with them, because they often book out early. So, trying to align them. What you don't want to do is find out that pushes your PCI out by 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and you're having to make an extra repayment on your home loan because of that. So just be mindful of what that looks like. I guess finding a bit of a middle ground is probably the key, in that, Cole. And maybe you can talk through what that sort of looks like.
Yeah, so there are some people who may not have the money to, or just don't want to get private inspector to go through, and they just trust the builder gets it done because the builder's been around doing it for a long time, or whatnot. Um, in that event, some of the things to bring and consider, sort of run through a little bit of a list here. If you're going to your PCI, so one of those things, obviously, the painter's tape is helpful. The builder probably would already have it, but bring that along. Your phone for the camera or slash the torch, just to sort of have a look at some of the corners and underneath and above things can help. Bring your contracts, your electrical, your color selections, your plans, and either open your notes on your phone or a notepad and just sort of cross-reference as you go through. Um, I guess like a level could help if you going to that level. Bad wording there, Darren, but bring a level if you want to go to that level. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's probably the most of those things. A second set of eyes. This is an interesting one. So if you're allowed to, if the builder permits, bring a second set of eyes. However, I will tell you that a lot of builders now will not let you bring a second set of eyes, only the eyes that are those who belong on the contract. So if you and or your partner or your friend or whatever it may be are on the contract, great, you can both come along. But if it's you're inviting, your dad or your uncle Gary, the builder will, in some cases, say no, not welcome. And unfortunately, the minority have ruined it for the majority in that situation. So we have a builder who would knock that back. And the reason they'd knock that back is because their uncle comes along, turns a PCI appointment into an absolute debacle, questioning 4 million things, abusing the supervisor and going bananas and just making it really ugly. And this is a person who hasn't actually signed your contract, who hasn't been through what you've been through as the customer, and they can cause a fair bit of damage and harm to that relationship. So some builders say, no, if you're not in the contract, stiff biscuits, you can't come.
Yeah.
So whereas some will allow that to happen. So if you are allowed to bring someone along, make sure it's someone who is actually maybe qualified to a degree, has your interests at heart, but also can be fair and reasonable, because it can really backfire if you go through a rough PCI. I've seen a few of those from time to time over the years, Darren.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
how to work it? Go systematic, one room at a time. Open the plan, walk in the front. Start at the front, walk in the front door, turn left into your master. Like go through the entry, then go through the master, then go through the walk-in robe, then go through the ensuite. Like just do it that way, one step at a time, and note those things down. Ceilings, walls, cornices, windows, doors. Make sure they're opening. The floors, the skirting, the power points, the switches. Are they working? Tapware, drains, run them all. Built-in cupboards, robes, etc. Go through the whole lot. It's there to, you're not there for 4 hours, but it should take you, within 45 minutes to an hour, I suppose, just to roll on through all those things. Um, uh, External as well. So render, brickwork, gutters, downpipes, the driveway, crossover. I guess the garage is an important one to check, making sure everything's in there. The selections against your contract, as I said a couple of times, make sure you got the right tapware, the right bench top, the right carpet's been put in, everything that you've actually paid for has been put in as well. So, and then as we said, mark it if you need to. The blue tape is very important. Take some photos if you need for your own reference, and make sure at the end of the day that the list is not just on your phone, but the list is on the supervisor's list as well, and that you're on the same page, and that'll all go get sorted between that PCI and that handover stage. Yeah. Hopefully that helps for anyone cruising through their own PCIs. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're documenting that, it's a good reference point for yourself as well. But like you've got to make sure that yourself and the supervisor have both agreed that those are the items that are going to be fixed. If it's not on the list, even though you think it should be, if it's not written down and it's not on the list, don't expect it to get fixed at that point in
Mm.
time.
You'll have to sign it
So
off anyway, right? So
correct.
Yeah.
But you want to go, hey, here's my defects list. Tick, 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 tick. Everything's on there. And then when you come back and see that generally at the handover day, or you might go back and do a re-PCI just to get those items fixed. Or I'd call you in to have a quick look to say, hey, everything's done. Come and check it out. What you want to do is go, that's done, that's done, that's done, that's done, and we're all good to go. Let's settle this house and let's get our keys and move in.
Mm.
That's where you want to be. Not, hey, hold on. We said this was on the list, but it's not on the list. If they didn't write it down, it's not on the list.
Yeah. And if you did get an inspection report, you go through that. Just, tick off all the ones that have been done. Supervisor will happily do it with you. Cross out the ones where the builder said we're not doing it. It's within tolerance, and just move through that list and make sure it's complete.
Yeah, for sure. And then moving on from there, Cole comes, is after the PCI, right? The journey isn't over at the key. So you've now settled the home, you've got your keys, and you've moved in. And so the journey's not over then, which is great. And this is one of the joys of building a brand new home is you get a maintenance and defects liability period, right? That's in every building contract, right? Volume builders commonly give a 3-month defects period. But again, check it out in your contract so that you know exactly what's in yours. Because some will do 6, some will do 12, right? There's no right or wrong in whatever they are, but you're entitled to a defects period. Just understand what that is. So, and then what you need to do with that is it's on you to submit the list back to your builder in line with that time frame. So they'll say, come and submit the list. If you don't submit a list, don't think they're going to be calling you to get it done, right? They just won't. Right. So go and submit the list. So the PCI is not your only chance to get some of these little bits and pieces fixed. If there's other things that have happened, and again, some of that'll be some of the settling of your home. So all of a sudden, a cupboard in your kitchen doesn't close quite as well, and they just got to adjust the hinges. Note it down on your list and send it off to your builder. They'll come out and get those things sort of fixed. So settling is normal. Some hairline cracking, minor movement, seasonal timber shrinkage, all within the first 12 months is expected. It's not a build failure, so don't panic if you see these things happening. It's expected. You will get some cracks. Even just putting the heating on for the first time all of a sudden changes the dynamic of your home. So again, going to be really, really cold inside the house, and now you've just warmed it up. What happens when you put something in the oven? It either shrinks or it expands, one or the other, right? So you watch when you cook food, the same. You've just turned your house into an oven. It's either going to shrink or expand one way or another. So, understand that movement will happen and that you'll get some of these things happening. You do get statutory warranties. So, implied warranty that's under the Domestic Building Act, plus your domestic building insurance framework. So, you're very well protected. You've got that's to cover your structural items, not non-structural items. Yeah, so it's to cover structural items. Again, you can read up about that. The other thing that's just happened, so as of July, the buyer protection laws have kicked in now, right? So these are some new laws. These basically are rights to get rectification orders in place for outstanding works through the Building and Plumbing Commission, right? Should you not be able to get to a resolution with your builder, right? So generally go to your builder, sort it out. If you can't sort it out with your builder, you do have the right now under the new buyer protection laws to go out to the Building and Plumbing Commission, and they'll make a call and they'll say, builder, you need to fix it, or actually, that's not an item that needs to be fixed. We don't have an idea on the timeframes or what that looks like just yet, but if you want to know a bit more about all that, jump back to episode 134. We've done a whole podcast on that as well, so you'll find out a fair bit of information there. Again, some of this information is still coming to hand on that. Like, so it's a, I guess, a moving train on this one, but it's certainly the buyer protection laws are, I think, one of the really good things that have come out of the changes that have been made over the last 12 months. And I think that it's certainly there to make someone to make a call rather than sitting in no man's land where no one's making any decision. Customer wanting something fixed, and builder saying, I'm not going to fix it, and no way to get to a resolution other than going to VCAT, and that can be long and arduous, etc. This is a much quicker process. So if you do get to that point, and we hope that you don't, and we think you shouldn't. But if it does get to that point, well, you know that that's there in place to help you. Um, Things to demand at settlement would be some of the handover documents. So you want to get a copy of your occupancy permit, that certificate of final inspection, your electrical and plumbing compliance certificates, your waterproofing certificate. If you've had termite protection, you want to get that. Any of your other warranty certificates, appliance manuals, just general warranties, maintenance guides, and the keys and remotes to absolutely everything. One bit with a lot of those warranties is go through them and fill them in. So you'll get extensive product warranties throughout the home, and it's something that's not often spoken about. But go and fill them in and send them off if then required to, or register them with those companies so that you can, capitalize on that. It's one of the joys of building a new home is you're going to get all these additional warranties that are there to protect you. So that'll be on your oven and cooktop. It'll be on your dishwasher. It'll be on your tapware potentially. It could be on your shower screens or on your bench tops. Run through all those things, fill them all in, send them off so that you can benefit from those. Um, One of the golden rules too is if you've got some uh, items that are agreed defects that are still to be rectified after you've handed over and you've agreed to that and you're like, it's okay. I put trust in my supervisor to do that. Try not to get any of your other works done until those items are fixed. They should be fixed pretty quickly after you've got the keys, but it might be getting done the next day, right? Try not to have things, if you're doing things like your own flooring, putting blinds in yourself, getting landscaping done, etc. Try not to get those things done until any of those little outstanding defects are sorted. Because again, you get a trade in, they bump the wall, and you're thinking that's going to be fixed by the builder. The builder ain't going to want to fix that. So, it just muddies the water as to who does what. So try not to put yourself in that position. Pretty
Mm,
much it on that one, mate.
very nice. Just rolling on with a pretty lengthy episode there, Dazza.
Yeah,
There's just so much to cover in this part of the process. I would argue that it's probably one of, if not the most important part for clients to get their heads around, in
sure.
terms of the construction time. Yeah, or the on-site is what I mean. But the reality is, yeah, there's a fair bit of information. So hopefully you can learn something from what we've shared. PCI is really important. Handover is really important. Understanding what happens between them is what we're trying to achieve here for you. So hopefully you've valued that. Come prepared, do your homework, make sure you note everything down, plus a time frame. If you've got a couple of items at handover, you're agreeing for the builder to do after you take the keys, after you've made your payment, all those sorts of things. Make sure they're noted, but make sure there's a time frame that they will be done within 2 days or 10 days or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
because otherwise that can also drag out. So plenty of little tips. And just a reminder that if the builder needs the payment for final, what we call final, but practical completion, you do need to pay that to them. You can't hold them ransom until those items are addressed, because the items will be addressed by the builder prior to handover. So, or in preparation,
And we're
ready
talking
for
about
handover.
minor items, Colin. Like,
Yeah.
so if your kitchen's not in, don't make the payment, right?
Yeah.
But if you've got a
Yeah.
little nick on the wall and they've got a painter coming to give it a quick coat of paint and fill a little hole, make the payment, right?
Yeah.
That's all we're talking about.
But the reality, if there's something major like that, it probably won't get occupancy permit.
Shouldn't. Correct.
So yeah, you won't probably get to PCI without it being in a position where it is down to those nitty gritties, I suppose, Darren. It won't be something massive or major or in terms of structural, So yeah, so there you have it, folks. Hopefully you enjoy that. Yeah, if you do, please jump on any platform you're listening on and give us a 5-star review. That helps spread the podcast far and wide. If you're looking for a handover checklist, actually, we do have one in our little school community along with a whole bunch of other resources. So skool.com and then search Home Building Hub. You have to join in there, and that's it. You don't have to do too much else other than take advantage of all the resources there. They're completely free. And yeah, other than that, if you've got questions, anything you want to reach out, topic ideas, there's an email on the website. You can just leave a message there as well. So Yeah. Everything outside of that, Daz, I think we've done well, and we thank you guys and girls for listening as always, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the podcast, guys. And just our disclaimer, whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered as legal or financial advice. It contains general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your personal situation before making any legal or financial decisions.
1,